Gonna minimize that music just a little bit. I know it's a little quiet, but I just hate dead air. Recently, somebody had asked me to, how do you make, right? I've actually done quite a bit on this to make sure that it's compliant with GitHub, but for those of you who want to play around with the software yourself before we make an official release in about a week or two, this video is exactly for you, and it should preserve your system and not fuck it up the way that I did the first time. Anyway, so this is going to be listed in the description of this video, this text file I have here. This is for x86 builds only, so Apple Silicon, sorry, can't help you. Raspberry Pi, it's going to be similar, but at this time, no, we're going to focus on x86. We will deal with ARM later. There are some unique things that have to happen for ARM that don't happen for x86. This is just the easiest one. Most of it will still translate, but anyway, let's just hop right into it. This is basically done in 3 sections. The first, we are going to install the software, although I don't have to do this, I've already done this on this particular build. We are going to install from scratch, we're actually going to make a version of Python 3.10.17. It's the last one in the 3.10 series. You do need Python 3.10 currently for one of the dependencies that I use, because it was just one of those carryovers that I haven't gotten around to updating, because I was just, let's get this working today. Then we're going to open a screen, and then we're actually going to do the compile. So the first thing, really all you have to do is copy, and it's sudo apt update and, which means next command, do a dist upgrade with the yes flag, and then sudo apt get install all of these things. These are what we're going to need, followed by a Y. This will happen automatically. You don't have to reboot, just copy and paste, right, into there. Copy here would be copy, paste there. We're good. We don't actually need to, so we'll just get out of that. Once that is done, before you continue on, you do need to follow these. Basically, just copy them line by line. You do need the sudo, right, because this is going to be installing it in the user's source file, which is a protected file. This can take a little bit long. Obviously, anything that requires you to make install is going to take a little bit long depending on your system. This is the system we're using today is an Intel i7 4770K with 16 gigs of RAM. It's not overclockable, not because of the CPU, but because of the motherboard that it's in. But you know, obviously, if you have a newer CPU, it's going to be faster, and if you have an older one, it's going to be slower. All right, one thing that is not in here, and it really should, is I typically always will run these in a screen. It's not in here because this was a file I was making for GitHub, and I'm not really good with YAML. Right, so let's just call this Bitoreum. Right, this will create a screen session, and yes, we did install screen up here, right? So starting now, we're going to say, boom, we're in a screen. That way, if I get disconnected from the server, because this isn't SSH into that server, I can just come back and the process will be there. The reason is that this needs to run, and that what we did here is we installed Python 3.10.17 as an alternative, not as a primary. The reason is that if you try to install this as a primary with most modern Ubuntu installations, including the new version of Mint, you will break your GUI and other functions of your operating system. So you want to create it as an alt install, not as a primary. And what this is going to do is, for the life of this terminal, we're going to default to using Python 3, because we really do need it to actually make currently. Right? So for the scope of this terminal, as long as this terminal stays open, or as long as the screen stays open, and that's why that's important, we will always be referencing Python 3 at 3.10. All right, now we are going to make the Bitoreum build directory. I don't actually just straight get the clone and call it Bitoreum. So we are going to paste that in there, and we're, the second half is then moved to that folder. Then we are going to get the clone from our new repository. We're using the branch 4.0.0.0, not the main. Main will not work for this, right? So as you see here, it gets the receptacle, and now we're going to cd into the depends folder, because first we have to make the depends. This is going to take a while. Well, not this specific step, but the making of the depends is going to take a while. We're now in depends. This text is going to tell you how many threads you have available. Get the GCC version, and then we're going to make these empty build logs and error logs. They're going to be empty for now. Those will be important here in a minute. Right, so we just do all of that. Oh, yeah. How about I right, copy it correctly. There we go. So we have echoed building with 8 threads, right? So that's what we have. That's what an i7-477K has. There's your GCC version. Now you don't have to do fallback anymore because I've actually built the fallback into the make file, so that you're good. So basically, at this point in time, you do want to copy this line. And just in a brief explanation, you're going to make this with the header implicitly stating that we're going to be using this host. And then not only are we going to tee the information in, we are going to also put it in the build log so we can reference it later in case there's an error. So then we're just going to do this and let it go. This is going to take about 20 minutes. So basically, enjoy the quiet. I'm going to turn off the microphone. I have to make a call. I will come back once this is done. So this is live. Enjoy the music. That didn't take near as long as I thought it was. We're going to turn down the music a little bit. I thought it was a little bit loud during that commercial break. Anyway, so on to the next step. Now, before we go into the main build, we're going to want to copy this line. What this line effectively does is we teed everything into a build log. Now we're going to say everything with the word warning, fail, or failure, error is going to be put into various logs. So that way, if we need to go back and reference them, or if this had failed for some reason, we can just see much more cleanly that those things are these reasons, as opposed to trying to decipher it from the build log, because the build log will have everything, good, bad, indifferent. So that's just a clean way that we can say, hey, it is what it is. All right. Next, we are going to then back out into the previous directory. Okay, we're in the main directory here. We are going to run autogen-sh because that's part of the auto build system. This will be pretty quick. Got me some nice iced coffee, which is really just coffee that I made on Sunday and then stuck it in the fridge for a couple of days. So it is just ice cold, baby. All right. That's done. This is going to take a little bit longer, but not too terribly bad. This basically just sets up the main build. So it's /configure -- prefix, dab on them, pwd, dab on them, depends, x86, and that's why the host was critical in the prior step. Eventually, I'd like to drop some of this stuff out, but for the time being, it is what it is. Follow along exactly what these lines say, and you should have yourself a bit of working software. So if it does finish with no problems, it'll tell you, used for compiling, we're going to have the wallet, we're going to have the GUI /qt with QR, ZMQ, test, bench, UMP, MSR, no debug in this one. Stack traces are enabled, crash hooks enabled, miner enabled, all this kind of stuff, right? So then, once again, we are going to touch these files because they exist in the depends folder. Now we need to make them in the main folder in case the same kind of stuff happens. And we are going to now do the main application making. This will create our software. This doesn't take near as long. We are going to make a debug version, but that'll be in the next step. So I will see you shortly. Enjoy the music again. Alright, see that didn't take near as long as the other one. It takes a little bit of time. Oops. So the next step in the process is for me to remember to turn down the fucking music. We want a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. Just a whiff of the music there. And then the same thing as we did before, we're going to write the build file for these error conditions, which didn't happen, but you know, it's a good practice to do so that way you can go back later and look at your work. All right, moving on to the next one. This line's in there to make the code work when it comes out in the main branch, but for right now it doesn't. So we are going to force this variable version with 4.0.0, the coin name, the architect type, which should be x86, and then this little line of code tells me which operating system we're operating on, so we are going to control and paste that in there. We've now defined our variables. We're now going to define the build drive, the compression drive, make the various directories, and then move the initial things over, and then make the main build directory a straight. Okay. Now we're going to make clean, which basically just undoes that, because now we're going to move on to the building of the debug. Now, in good practice, you probably would then want to put empty into your various variables. They're already created, but whatever. I don't, because the debug is least important. It's more important for me than you as an end user, but whatever. And then here we have just moved everything, the autogen and the configure, into one line. It was in 2 lines prior. Now it's just in 1. So it's just going to go ahead and do all of that. Fun times at the OK Corral. Damn, this coffee's good. I need to do that more often. Make a whole big ass batch of it and just leave it in the fridge for a couple of days. My refrigerator smells clean. Tastes better. Alright, as you can see here, we now have debug enabled for this particular version. Now we need to make said version, and we're not teeing it. This isn't really going to error out. And the reason why it won't is if the previous one didn't, and we've made it this far, it is very unlikely that this one would fail. So you can put the information into the build log and do all of that, but it's really not needed. So I will see you again. This one, I think, takes even less time than the one before, but I will still put it on pause and let you enjoy the music. bit. Yeah, a little bit. All right, so now we have our debug version done. Now we are going to move it out of the source. And for those that were paying attention when I said instead of copy and move, right? That's what that is. Originally it was copy. I actually want to move it out of source. I typically try not to keep things in source, even though normally I will always make these clean builds. It's just my good practice. So this is something I was writing quite a few times. All right, now this right here, we can actually just do in one large thing. This is basically going to make the checksum files that we need, and then take the source files and then make them into the compressed archives that you would normally see on a GitHub true release. So we just copy all that text, paste it. It's going to have all of the SHA data on the screen for a quick second, and then compile it using our variable name. So it's going to have the coin name, the operating system we're working with, the architect tep, and then the version number all built in. And then once it clears out on the bottom, it's still going here a little bit, I think. Yeah, it's still going. All right, we're good. Just ignore that. So everything's done. All right, so this wasn't on this computer, by the way. This was on this computer. It has a GUI. I could have done it here, but it looks better the way that we did it, and it put everything in the Bitoreum build. So it created these folders where we have the individual builds, right? And then what we made here at the end were these compressed files that you would normally see on the GitHub. And what do we have? Bitoreum Linux Mint 22.1, which is the operating system this is, x86 architecture, and version 4.0.0.0. We don't really need all of that. We just got to make sure that, yes, we don't have Bitoreum running. We go into the build folder and we say, go ahead and open the Qt, which is how you would normally do it. And voila, we now have a working version of 4.0.0.0. Obviously, it'll need to resync. Normally, if you don't have wallet set up, you will have to go through and do that. This just makes the software. So yeah, thank you for joining on this. So that way, for those of you following along at home, I don't actually recommend running this as production software. I would still continue to use 3.0.2 for the time being. Both of them are stable, but this software hasn't been finalized. This was just to answer the question about how do you actually build? Can I test the software? And the answer to those questions is yes. The whole point of a GitHub is to make available and freely distribute software. I just want to throw in the caveat, it's not finished. I still have 2.5 big bug fixes to finally hammer out before I'm comfortable releasing the software. Go ahead and play around with it, but it should also sync to more nodes faster because I fixed the seed problem. That was one of the big bugs, is that with Bitoreum.org going offline and the nodes that were running the seeds, which are basically fully synced nodes to share with the network to get syncing done faster offline, there were no seeds, so I had to fix that, and that's one of the big bugs that this solves. So if you do have to sync from scratch, this software is going to help you. If you already have a synced file, you're good. There will be a bootstrap available at the time of release as well, both for our software, the miners and the wallets. You'll have one, and then there will be one for the Explorer as well, for those that want to make a Mirror Explorer for I don't know what reason. Some of you seem to be interested in that. Our Explorer is still in the process of syncing. I don't really want to show you that because unfortunately that application shows data that I don't want to make freely available, but it is syncing. That's what's going on right there. That little icon, that's the software that I'm kind of using to monitor it. All right, thank you so very much, and I will see you all this Sunday. What is the Sunday's date? I'm thinking it's like the 8th or the 9th or something like that. The 7th. No, the 8th. Yeah, I was right. I will see you on Sunday the 8th for our weekly update and announcement. Thank you so very much.